Ready to go, everyone?
Yep, ready to go.
All right, welcome everyone to our another Q&A with one of our fabulous mentors. Today we have Laura Garcia talking to us about her career and her journey and responding to some of your questions about, well, anything that you think Laura might be the best person to answer. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we will go through the questions that you've all shared on the form. And with that said, because we have short time, Laura, could you kindly introduce yourself and just tell us what is it that you currently do and give us like a brief sort of overview of how it is that you landed here in this position?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everybody. My name is Laura Garcia. I'm originally from Mexico, but I live in the UK and I've been working here for almost 11 years now. My current job, I'm part of the video team at BBC Mundo. We are the Spanish language service at the BBC. And my particular kind of emphasis, it's quite broad because I like doing a bunch of stuff, but I mostly cover things about science, things about equality, gender rights, women, and anything that has to do with platforms. So short video, things for YouTube Short, Instagram Reels, TikTok, that kind of stuff. My journey into journalism has been very non-traditional and traditional at the same time. So I did an undergrad in journalism, I did a master's degree in journalism, and then for different visa reasons in the UK, I've never been able to work as a journalist full time until my current job. It took me 10 years to get there. I always did journalism on the side, but I always took whatever other job I could get to pay the bills, to get experience, to learn other stuff, and to practice my skills. So I was a teacher. I worked at a nonprofit doing research on disinformation. I gave classes. I shot wedding videos and did photos for events. And eventually, a decade later, my dream of being a journalist through, even though I've been doing it just on the side as much as I could for a really long time.
That's amazing. Yeah, you have such a broad experience, and you've also worked in Austin, right? Or you spent some time in Austin.
Yeah, I lived in Austin for a year.
Yeah, so you have a ton of different experience. So yeah, someone asked, what does it even mean to work as a multimedia storyteller, and how does one get there? I guess this is a question, but yeah, in your experience, how has that been?
Yeah, but I love it. So I would describe myself as a storyteller more as a journalist because of the story that I just told you. For 10 years, I was like, well, I just cannot call myself a journalist because I don't do it full time. So I decided to broaden it out to telling stories, because then the same skills that you need to tell the story, for example, to do a video for a small nonprofit, are the same skills that you need to cover a news report when we're talking on the technical side, right? And at least on the storytelling, how do you use images and video and sound together to tell a story and thread it together? The multimedia part is just a catch-all phrase for any way that you can tell a story. Because whether it's words or video or animations or VR filters or text on words or a combination of all of the above, or audio on its own and you're working in radio, learning not just skills for all of these different kinds of media, but also knowing which is the best for each story you're trying to tell is really important. So just because I'm a video person, I don't think everything should be a video. There's stories they shouldn't be video, they should be radio, or they should be text, and vice versa, right? So learning not just the skills to tell these stories in lots of different platforms, but learning how to discern that, and thinking beyond just traditional, at least for me, traditional what journalists are and don't, and they don't, what they do and what they don't do, and broadening it out to anything that lets us tell stories, that let us connect with each other and kind of share our experiences.
Amazing. So that leads really nicely, I think, for a second question, which was about all the ways in which you tell stories. So using images, words, sound. So how do you go about figuring out where you're lacking in skills, or what are your skills gaps? Because I'm assuming things evolve all the time and you're always learning things. I'm assuming this is what this question is. So how do you go about figuring that out?
Oh man, the one thing that I know is that there's so much that I don't know how to do. And that is a constant battle that like pisses me off, but also makes me really curious. And I try not to keep a list of all the things that I think I should know how to do and I don't, because that's just a really depressing exercise. And rather, I kind of try and use it as a way to make myself brave enough to try. So if I come up with an idea and I'm like, I actually don't know how I would do that, I just try it. I just try it. And then in the trying, you figure it out, or you ask for someone's help, or you learn something new. I think what I've decided is that I'm never going to learn to do all the things that I want to learn how to do. But if I don't let that stop me from dreaming how I want to tell stories, eventually we meet somewhere in the middle. And then it kind of pans out. So for example, my current one is, I really wish I knew Python or R. They're programming languages that help you do big scale data journalism or data analysis, right? I don't know how to do it, but I've been reading enough on it on my spare time that now I've also made friends with the data journalism team. And because we can kind of speak in similar-ish languages, I have these ideas that I read, these stories that I really think should be told in data, and now we can speak the same language. So maybe I don't have to learn how to do R. I just need to learn how to speak to the people who know how to do R, right? But it's all about not letting the things that you don't know how to do yet limit the kind of stories that you want to tell, and also picking your battles, right? If there's something that you want to try, I would maybe recommend don't try it on something that's really urgent. So if you cover news, don't try it on breaking news, because then there it's more important to be accurate and to be out quickly. But with more evergreen human interest stories, things that aren't necessarily tied to a specific date or that you have a lot of time to plan, then just do that. And the other thing is, I download every single app I come across that I think, oh, that someone recommends or that I see online or that someone on TikTok is trying, and I just try it. I use my cat as a profile when I'm not sure I want to be on any of these spaces. Like when I first came across TikTok in 2018, I was like, I'm not sure this is a spay journalist. So I just made her an account and played with it. And eventually there's so much that you can learn from like reading about stuff until you actually try it and you figure it out for yourself.
I love that. I think some of what you're saying is, one, to be curious about things, and also that you don't need to know everything perfectly. You can just know enough and sort of be a generalist to speak to others and find collaborators, right? Which is a really smart way, I guess, to move. And I think probably an advice,
yeah, and I think
applicable elsewhere, not just
yeah, and I think that word generalist, or what's the other phrase in English? A jack of all trades, master of none. I think these two words are really loaded with a negative connotation that we have inherited from a completely different media ecosystem and a completely different industry that was very more white, more privileged, and more male than it is now, where it was completely doable because people had the money to do it, to just pick a career and then grow in it and become a super specialist. The industry has changed now. No, not many of us can afford to do that. And there's also nothing wrong with knowing a little bit of everything, as long as you're, like, for example, I'm really good at figuring out how to put those things together. I might not know how to do them perfectly separately, but I can bring the people together to help me do that. And I think the more that we move away from that view that either you're a specialist or you're not good at your job, because it's just old and outdated, and that's not how the industry works anymore in broad terms, in media, not just journalism, but communications and publishing, the better off we're going to be.
Yes, I love that you said that about the situation in Israel, because we have a question for you about coming from Mexico, and if you had ever felt imposter syndrome of, one, English might not necessarily be your first language, your native language, and then second, how did you figure out how to get in the market here? Because I feel like it's really hard for anyone who's not from the UK, or probably not from one place moving to another, how to find the places where you can fit in. You can shed.
Yeah, so,
I know it took you a while, but I think that's also the note.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thing that I was going to say. Part of it is not giving up. I think that's the easiest way to do it, to say it. And it's really hard. It's really very hard. Like when I graduated from my master's degree, they changed the visa rules just before I graduated. So they're back now, where if you do a master's in this country, you can change it to a work visa for 2 years. They changed them as I was about to graduate. So I came to the UK thinking, I'll go into a degree, I'll graduate, and I'll stay in a work for 2 years. And they changed the rules, right? And I was like, God damn it. So I spent the 3 months that I had left on my student visa applying for jobs, going to a million job interviews and hearing over and over again, you are exactly who we're looking for, if only you had a different passport. And it broke my heart. I mean, they didn't say it like that, but that was kind of the idea, right? Back then Brexit hadn't happened. So like if I'd been Spanish or European, like that would have been completely different. And that broke me, and that's really hard. It's not you, it's the system. Nevertheless, if you persist, there are ways around it. When I managed to come back to UK, I took on a job that had nothing to do with journalism, knowing that what I was trying to do was A, come back to the UK, and B, practice the skills that helped me tell stories. So it didn't matter to me if my job didn't have the word journalist in it, as long as it let me practice the skills that I was going to use to be a journalist, as long as it let me play around with video camera, as long as it let me play around with video editing software or practice writing stories. And eventually that kind of gets to you. The imposter syndrome has not stopped since I started my job more than a year ago. Every single day there's moments when I doubt myself, and it feels like shit, you guys, and it doesn't get better. You just have to push through it, and eventually you look back and you go, oh, I did a really good job, right? Or like I have this continuous mental breakdown when I'm trying to write a script. When I finish it, I'm like, oh, it's actually quite a good script. I did it. It's kind of like going to the gym. Sometimes you just have to push yourself through it. And on the language part, I didn't feel that much imposter syndrome when I first got here on English not being my first language, because I grew up speaking American English. I struggled to kind of wrap my head around British English, and I had to relearn my English, and that was a little bit hard. If I'm honest, I'm feeling it more the other way around. I spent 10 years of my life working exclusively in English, and now that I'm back working in a Spanish language newsroom, my Spanish had gone way more than I thought. And for anyone who's like a second generation or first generation immigrant, or parent, or your parents are from a different country, or you speak a different language, not feeling like you are doing like you're not, like I wasn't performing my Mexicanness enough, like I'd forgotten how to be Mexican enough. It's just wild. That whole thing is just, the reversed imposter syndrome has also been surprising. I was not expecting that. Going back into a newsroom that speaks exclusively my mother tongue, that I should be able to fit in straight away, and realizing, holy shit, I've been working in English for 10 years. I've forgotten how to be an adult in Spanish. Like, how do I do this again? Like, I forgot how to spell. I forgot how to do accents. Someone had to read over my scripts at the beginning, just to make sure like I didn't make any grammatical mistakes. But again, that wasn't why they hired me. They hired me because I'm good at telling stories. So I had to remind myself of that. Like, you didn't get hired because, I mean, partly, yes, sure, because you speak Spanish, but not because you're the queen of Spanish. You got hired because you're good at telling stories. And imposter syndrome will surprise you in ways that you're not expecting. So if you think like, oh my God, I'm ready for it, you're not. And that's fine. And everyone goes through it. Just talk to someone about it, and just kind of like make yourself go to the gym, make yourself finish that script, make yourself send off that application. You will be fine.
I love this. This is such great advice. Okay, Laura, we had a question that I have no idea if that will work for you. But yeah, someone asked, you work with different mediums. What do you think about podcasts? Is there still room for more people to do it? Should I start my own?
Oh man, I love a podcast. Podcasts are great. So I think there's always room. You just have to think about whether it's a podcast or YouTube series or TikTok channel or anything. Don't just do it for doing it unless you know that growth isn't your purpose, right? If you're going to start a podcast for the sake of learning how to do a podcast and doing it for yourself and whatever, that's amazing. If you're trying to start a podcast with a view to grow and to potentially monetize, and that doesn't mean that you charge for the podcast, it just means that podcast opens up for you professional opportunities, then make sure that you look at the market. So make sure that you find that niche. There is always a niche, there's always space, but you have to have it really clear in your head. So do we need another football podcast? Probably not, if all they're doing is talking about football, right? Do we need another football podcast about historical upsets in World Cups and what it means, that's meant for those teams historically? Maybe. Right now we just saw something amazing happening with Saudi Arabia and Argentina, and with Japan and Germany. So if you're going to do it, yes, always do it, I think would be the answer for me. just be very clear. If you're going to do it for the sake of doing it for you and for practice, go for it. Do it on whatever you want. It doesn't really matter because it's for you. If you're trying to do it as a professional strategic thing with a view to grow and commercialize or monetize in some way or another, make sure you do your research. And the last thing is Anchor, which is the what are they called, Anchor? They're Spotify's podcast arm. I was going to swear more than I should have. They have loads of resources on their website for podcast creators, and their platform is actually really good. And there's a lot of free-ish production software. And the headphones that you wear to make calls on a phone that have a little microphone, those have amazing sound quality. So actually producing a really good, like well-sounding podcast is not as hard as you think. You just need to think about it a little bit.
I love that. And if anyone needs to talk about podcast production, hit us up. Okay, we have another question about content in that way. I'm a content creator, storyteller. My series are on YouTube and Instagram. Do you have any tips to get my work more widely seen?
Oh, excellent question. Okay, so on YouTube, it's all about learning the tagging system so that people can find your content really easily, and really thinking through the title of your video and the description, because that is what YouTube is going to use to drive people to your content. So think about your titles as what would people use YouTube as a search engine, basically. So what would people type into YouTube to find your video? What happened in today's match at the World Cup? That is a better title for a YouTube video to be discoverable, rather than the Road of the Arabia, whatever, Saudi Arabia, Argentina match, right? Or a combination of those two. Think always about the search terms that people are going to use, because that's going to get you more noticed. And like religiously go through the tagging system, add loads, look at what other people are doing, and make sure that you curate the cards at the end of the video to recommend more of your content. Because otherwise YouTube will select a video that fits that person's profile, which might be your content, but it might not. And then you're losing an opportunity to retain those viewers and those kind of, think of them as customers on your site. For Instagram, it's a question of interaction. People forget that social media is like a party. If you throw a party and you're the only ones to talk, no one's going to listen to you. So on any of these platforms that are interactive, make sure that you interact with others' accounts, make sure that you tag people in your posts if you're talking about them, make sure that you provide opportunities for your public to interact with you. So whether it's a question box, but then answer them, right? Never, if you're asking people to contribute to a conversation, never let that go unanswered from your behalf, and look at what other accounts are doing that works for them and figure out what you feel comfortable with. Never feel like you have to do what other people are doing on social, because if you don't feel comfortable doing it, it's totally going to be like, people are going to know. It's going to look like you don't want to do it. And there's millions of ways of doing social media, and not all of them are kind of type A, in your face, face to camera ways. People can do really effective ways of communicating and telling stories using only their voice, or using only captions, or ways, wherever your comfort level is. I think we have this falsely perceived idea that unless you're the influencer type that wants to do everything on camera, you can't do social, and that's just wrong.
I love that. All right. Do we have time? Okay, we have 5 minutes. I think we have time for the final question. Yeah? You sure, okay, Laura? I know
Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Okay, the question was, do you have any advice for anyone trying to break into journalism now?
Oh man, that last question is the
hardest.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm trying to like organize the millions of thoughts running around my head. So speaking as someone who taught in a journalism school and then has also been on the hiring end now for junior entry level positions, journalism is like riding a bike. You can tell me that you're a journalist and then you can do journalism, but unless I see you do it, it doesn't really matter. And that means whether you go to uni or not, or whether you do journalism as a school like course or not, do journalism. In Spanish, journalism is a verb. Hacer periodismo. You make journalism. You do journalism. So get involved with your school paper. Get involved with your local paper. Local papers are so understaffed that if you go in and you say, "Can I help out on weekends?" they will let you do it. So will radio stations. Look out for these kind of different either volunteered or paid opportunities that let you practice the skills of journalism. So my portfolio, when I applied for my current job, had very, very little journalism, but a lot of, oh, I went to cover an event. Oh, I did a video for this wedding, or I did all of these things that showcase the skills to do the journalism part. So don't worry so much as of like, oh, have I got the right degree? Have I gone to the right school? Did I make the right choice of whether to go to uni or not? In the end, what's going to get you hired is going to be your portfolio. Do whatever is available to you and within your means, because sometimes it's a luxury as well to do work that is either unpaid or very low paid, to get as much of a portfolio as you can, whether that is taking pictures at events or running someone's social media account. That portfolio will speak louder than any paper that you can wave in anybody's face. Nobody has ever asked me what degree I got. Like, they know I went to school and studied journalism, but no one cares what, like, did I get a merit or distinction or 2A? It's not that kind of profession. It might be really important in others, like if you're an accountant or if you're a lawyer. In journalism, it's not. Your portfolio speaks for you. So figure out what that means. If it's your podcast, that sounds amazing. Go and do a podcast. If it's a blog, do your blog. All of this stuff is really cheap, and these things have democratized multimedia production for us. I have an entire dashboard that I can share with you guys afterwards if you remind me, Isabel, of free multimedia production tools, things that can help you edit video, audio, make illustrations, make animations, make graphics. I don't tell my bosses, but I don't believe in paying for software. I think it prices people out. So I found a bunch of free options that let you do a good job, and just do that. Think of your portfolio. That is what's going to get you noticed and hired. There's no other way to be a journalist than by embracing the verve hacer periodismo. Just do it. You'll mess up, you'll learn loads, it'll be great, it'll make you a better storyteller.
Yeah, I think this is amazing advice, and I'm glad I saved that question for last, because that was like a really good way to end things. I think this was so inspired, and I think everyone can take something from this question. And I agree with you. I mean, before I moved to London, I didn't even have a CV. It was all like, this is what I've done. This, because I also my degree was never related to what I do anyway, so it was useless. People didn't even want to know. They're like, well,
Yeah, and also like everything has transferable skills, right? And depending on your background and the opportunities that you have and the support that you have, and whatever job, as random as it is, that you need to have, everything teaches you a skill that you can transfer into the job that you want to do. So for example, I used to read the bingo online. I did that for a job for a little while because I needed the money. What has it taught me? To speak to camera. You can flip it. Never be embarrassed or apologize for the fact that you worked in retail or stacked shelves or were a waitress. That shows you how to deal with people, and assholes at that, which is going to be good when you're interviewing people. And taught you time management skills. It taught you how to work in a group. Like you were a babysitter. That's just wild, because dealing with children makes you really patient, and it probably makes you think about how you explain things to others. Any random job that you've had has taught you something. Figure out what that is and convince yourself of it, because no one else is going to do you down for it unless you do it first. I think I'm going to misquote Eleanor Roosevelt here, but she said something along the lines of, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I'm going to tweak that. No one can make you feel inferior about your professional experience, lack or not of, than yourself. Just own it. All you've done, just own it.
yes. Oh my God, this is amazing advice, Laura. Thank you so much. Can you tell us how can people connect with you or find you or say hi and thank you for sharing your time with us, or we can see your work? Where are you at?
Yeah, totally. So my DM would find literally everywhere. On Twitter, I am at Laura GRB. Same on Instagram. On TikTok, I'm Laura Garcia RB, I think. And if anyone's moving to Mastodon, my Mastodon handle is on my Twitter account, because I can't, can I remember it? Hold on a second, I'll find it. If anyone doesn't know what Mastodon is, it's the place we're all pretending that is going to be as good as Twitter, but it's not as good yet. So I'm at GRB at mas.to, but I can also share that with you guys. DMs are open. Super happy to talk about literally anything. There were people who were kind enough to listen to me and my ideas and give me advice when I was in my 20s, and now that I'm in my mid 30s, I'm happy to do it for anybody else who's either in their 20s or not in their 20s, because that doesn't really matter either. So get in touch. Happy to talk.
Thank you so much, Laura. This was so good. It's so insightful. And again, thank you for being a mentor with us and sharing your time. So yeah, everyone else who was listening, thank you for staying with us. This will be on the Slack soon, so you can chat, and I'll talk to Laura to get those resources she said, and I'll share that as well with you all. And we have another Q&A today with Alexander Rose at 5. So I'll see you all there. And thanks again, Laura, for being with us. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I've been like slowly seeping into darkness as it gets dark in my flat.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.